The United States of America will release $20 billion in frozen Iranian assets in exchange for Iran promising to give up its stockpile of enriched uranium. But at the same time, Donald Trump unexpectedly agreed to let Iran keep its nuclear program. Details have emerged about the agreement between the US and Iran, which were accepted by Donald Trump's administration. Moreover, the US agrees to a deal that will only suspend but not dismantle or completely eliminate Iran's nuclear program. In response, Iran today, as you know, has unblocked the Hormuz Strait, although I remind you it was not blocked before the war. And now analysts are saying that after such an agreement, Trump will face a wave of criticism from some Americans who support a tougher stance. In particular, these are the so-called hawks within the Republican Party. My name is Alexei Pecci. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, please like, subscribe to the channel, and leave any comment under this video. And subscribe to my Telegram channel Pecci News. The link is in the description. So, according to American officials who are participating in the negotiations, the US and Iran are currently negotiating a 3-page plan to end the war. One of the points being discussed is the US releasing $20 billion in frozen Iranian funds in exchange for Iran giving up its stockpiles of enriched uranium. In other words, essentially, the US is offering to buy the enriched uranium for $200 billion in cash. And as previously stated in the White House, there has been steady progress in the negotiations this week, although significant disagreements still remain. But it's important to remember that an agreement on these terms would put an end to the war, but could potentially provoke a negative reaction from supporters of a hard line toward Iran. After all, Trump himself said too much during the war and before it, and insisted that he would only accept Iran's surrender. Remember, he said, "I will only accept surrender, unconditional surrender of Iran." And he also criticized Barack Obama's nuclear deal, although now he is ready to offer Iran a deal that is even less favorable for the US. On Thursday, Trump said that American and Iranian negotiators will likely meet this weekend for a second round of talks to try to reach a deal. Most likely these talks will take place on Sunday in Islamabad. And this comes amid reports about the unfreezing of Iranian assets worth $20 billion. Today, Iran announced the opening of the Hormuz Strait for all commercial vessels. But the US is not lifting its blockade until an agreement is reached. According to the White House, one of the main priorities of the Trump administration is to ensure that Iran cannot access its stockpiles of enriched uranium, which amount to almost 2 tons or 2,000 kilograms stored in its underground nuclear facilities. Well, that also includes 450 kilograms of enriched material, up to uranium enriched to 60%, which is very close to weapons grade. Meanwhile, the Iranians need money, especially after the exhausting war and the blockade of their oil exports. And now the parties are negotiating about what will happen to the accumulated uranium stockpiles and which part of Iran's assets will be unfrozen. They are also discussing the conditions under which Iran will be able to use this money. That is, the assets will be unfrozen and there will be stipulations on where they can be spent. And you know, it's hard not to recall how loudly Donald Trump criticized Barack Obama's administration when they unfroze $400 million of Iranian assets in 2015. Back then, according to Trump, it was a problem, but now, according to the same Trump, it's not a problem at all. But that's not all. According to sources, at an earlier stage of the negotiations, the US was ready to allocate $6 billion for the purchase of food, medicine, and other humanitarian goods. The Iranians demanded $27 billion. And according to the latest data being discussed by the US and Iran, the amount will be $20 billion. This means that it was Trump who made more concessions, not the regime in Iran. So once again, the US initially says, "We'll unfreeze $6 billion, the Iranians say no, 27. They settled on 20. Well, nothing is fully decided here yet, because in the meantime, the US asked Iran to agree to send all its nuclear materials to US territory. While the Iranians only agreed to their so-called blending inside the country, the point is that Iran is only willing to blend low-enriched and highly enriched uranium. In this way, they want to get rid of uranium enriched up to 60%, but to hand it over to the Americans, now that's another shock. As part of a compromise proposal currently under discussion, some of the highly enriched uranium will be sent to a third country, not necessarily to the US. And some will be diluted in Iran under international supervision, but earlier it was stated that the US was against the uranium being sent, for example, to Russia. Thank God. It is also stated that Iran should voluntarily give up uranium enrichment altogether. Trump has already declared this a victory, but there is a nuance here. In the last round of negotiations, the US demanded that Iran agree to a 20-year moratorium. Iran responded with a proposal for a 5-year moratorium. And the mediators are still trying to bridge the gap. And here is the most important point, that is, Donald Trump is already willing to at least temporarily suspend Iran's nuclear program. Not eliminate it, not dismantle it, but suspend it. And now let me remind you of something. February 13th, 2 weeks before the war began, Trump made a stern statement, quote, "We don't need any enrichment in Iran. We don't want uranium enrichment at all. Iran must understand. Either we make a deal now or our military will solve the problem." March 1st of the same year, the war has already started, Trump adds, quote, "We are not against it. We stop them. Our goal is the complete destruction of Iran's nuclear potential. And this threat must be eliminated forever." April 16th, that is literally yesterday, Trump says, quote, "They agreed to give us the nuclear dust that remained underground after the B-2 strikes. I told them, I don't need promises for 20 years. I need that weapon to no longer physically exist." But the most striking quote from Donald Trump was made at the beginning of the year. Quote, "Obama signed a piece of paper for 10 years that didn't solve anything. I'll get an agreement that will settle this issue forever." Well, I don't know what to say about that. Trump said the word forever so often and so loudly that now a 20-year deal seems very strange. Well, to put it mildly. But the main shock is still ahead of us all. According to Axios sources, quote, "Under the Memorandum of Understanding, Iran will be allowed to have nuclear research reactors for producing medical isotopes, but at the same time, it is obliged to ensure that all its nuclear facilities are located above ground. The existing underground facilities will remain unused. Yes, Iran retains the right to enrich uranium, and its nuclear program does not disappear completely. And another question is that it is unclear whether the Memorandum of Understanding applies to Iran's ballistic missiles, what happened to the missile program, and the question of its support for regional proxy forces. Israel and Republican hawks in Washington previously demanded that these topics be discussed in any negotiations with Iran. It is also now known that Iran is demanding to be allowed to freely sell oil at market prices without sanctions. Iran is demanding participation in the global financial system. But they also don't want to simply give up what they already have. But where is Donald Trump's achievement here, you may ask? A month and a half of bloody war has passed, and it seems like everything is going back to how it was before. And the achievement turned out to be very high profile. On Thursday, Donald Trump publicly told journalists that during the negotiations, Iran agreed to make, quote, "a very strong statement about Iran's nuclear weapons. That's it." Yes, you understood everything correctly. Trump presented it as a victory that Iran would simply, well, very strongly promise not to develop nuclear weapons, even though it will still keep its uranium enrichment capabilities. I'll leave it at that. Share your thoughts and opinions about this in the comments below this episode. And if you want to support the work of this channel, you can do so using the links and details in the description of this video. I would appreciate your donations. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.